Captain ThirdGen YouTube channel.
Alright guys, in this video we're going to be talking about if the 1998 Buick Park Avenue Ultra is worth buying in 2021. Now the short answer is a resounding yes, but let's get into more detail here. So 1998 Park Avenue Ultra. This model ran from 97 to 2005, and 98 it got some updates, mostly to the front suspension. 97's had some specific control arms and struts and stuff like that, kind of a pain. But if you notice, this car is blue on blue. Now this was more common in the earlier years, such as this one. This is a 98. As the time went on, and by 2005 most of the interiors were tan, you know, most people weren't a fan of the blue. When I bought the car I was kind of disappointed that it had a blue interior, but it's kind of grown on me a little bit. I would still prefer tan, but the blue interior is really not bad. It's kind of nice that it's unique, and especially today everything is just black interior, so it's kind of cool that it's different. So we'll hop inside here. Now this gauge cluster is not original to the car. This is an 03 to 05 Ultra gauge cluster. Somebody had swapped it in at some point, but original head unit, original HVAC, all that good stuff. So this is mostly an original car, with the exception of a few little changes. So let's take a look under the hood. This is really why you want to buy a 98 Park Avenue, and it's the 1300 engine. Now with the Ultra, such as this car, you get this, the L67. Supercharged, baby. Eaton M90 blower, 240 horsepower, 280 pound-feet of torque. Pretty conservative numbers. This thing moves out. It's 207 inches long, which is quite large for a sedan, and it gets down. You put your foot down, the thing will move, and it will move with authority. These engines are really solid, really famous for being virtually indestructible. The naturally aspirated ones get incredible fuel economy. The supercharged ones, I get like 27 miles a gallon in this one on the highway, so not great, but pretty respectable for a car of this size. It does run on 93 octane, supercharger, 93 octane, kind of have to go together. I've heard of people running regular in these, but it seems like an absolutely horrible idea to me. GM recommends you run premium gas. I'm going to run premium gas. But if you look at this engine bay, pretty roomy. It's quite a massive engine bay for a front-wheel drive car. That's one of the advantages of a pushrod V6 is you get a lot of room. So if you're planning on buying one of these, relatively easy to work on. Normally front-wheel drive cars can be a huge pain. This one's not so bad. So, is it worth buying? Yes. Yes, it is. Engine, rock solid. Now, the transmission in this is a 4T65 HD. There's really not that many differences between the regular 4T65 and the HD. Really not a whole lot changed. That is the weak point of this drivetrain. Now, in a Buick, you're probably not going to be out racing the thing. So, if you drive it like I do, which is just cruising around, going to work, going to school, going on little trips, the transmission is going to be fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're going to be out ragging on it, flooring it, launching it, really abusing the transmission, I would not be surprised if you had issues with that transmission. In conversations with some GM engineers, these transmissions did not like these engines back in the day. But GM's penny pinching, they would not put a 4T80 under this engine, which is kind of a shame, because if this engine had a 4T80 under it, man, what an indestructible drivetrain that would be. But enough about the drivetrain. It's front-wheel drive, which by looking at it you wouldn't really tell. It kind of looks, the proportions are more like a rear-wheel drive car, so it's kind of interesting that it's front-wheel drive. Really doesn't bother me though. It's not a performance car. I'm not going to take it to the track. I'm not going to take it out in mountain roads or anything like that. So it really doesn't bother me that it's front-wheel drive. Suspension, these cars are big, they're wide. They kind of eat shocks up. This one apparently has 65,000 miles. Dash cluster has been swapped, but I have documentation that leads me to believe that the 65,000 miles are original. But suspension is kind of eh. I'm going to have to replace it. The struts all the way around. But look at it, it's weathered pretty well. It's not really rusted. It's got some dents and dings. Paint quality on these, it's not great. As the time went on, you know, later cars, 2004, 2005, paint got a lot better. But this car being a 98, paint's pretty rough. And this is very common. You see a lot of Park Avenues and older LeSabres. Paint's kind of roasted, and that's just how it goes. 90s GM paint was not wonderful. 90s anything paint was not wonderful. Paint technology has come a long way since 1998. But now I've done a few of these videos with other cars, but with this one, I mean, there's really not a whole lot to say. Usually I'm trying to argue that some sports car is practical and you can use it as a daily driver. With this car, I really don't have to argue. It really is comfortable. I fit very, very well in it. There's no shortage of space in this car. I am about 6'1", and I'm a big boy. I'm not exactly skinny, and I fit very well in here. I got a lot of headroom, and this car has a sunroof, so if you don't have a sunroof, you have even more space. Got a lot of headroom. Seat is super comfortable, as to be expected with a Buick. I have very good visibility all the way around the car. A lot of glass. Ergonomics are pretty sweet. You know, I can reach everything very nice, and I have the seat, you know, slouched back quite a bit. Does have a nice console. This was more common on the later cars. For this to be a 98, this is unusual. I believe this was swapped in at some point. Most of the early cars and most Park Avenues in general will have a bench seat, which I do prefer, but this is what the car came with when I bought it, so it is what it is. Ergonomics here, I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan of the HVAC, but it is what it is. I'll get into a common problems video in a different video, and I'll do a quirky, you know, quirks of the Park Avenue in a different video. This is more, should you buy this car? It's very comfortable, it's very quiet, not terrible on fuel. If you get the naturally aspirated one, you're golden, because you'll be getting about 30 miles a gallon on regular gas, which is pretty sweet. The stereos in these cars, really good, really good. So the base one will have a 6-speaker stereo, it'll be the Concert Sound 2, which is still a great stereo. This is the Concert Sound 3, which is the 9-speaker, and man, it sounds very good for a 1998. This car, being an Ultra, does have a heads-up display, so that's kind of cool. I don't know if I can get it with just the accessory here. We'll see if you guys can see it. Yeah, I mean, I can see it totally fine. I don't really think it's going to show up on camera, but it does work, so it's pretty cool. I really like the heads-up display. It works really well. It makes me wonder why more cars don't have that, because I really think that's a good idea. But we'll take a step in the back. You see heated seats, front, or for the front, driver and passenger. Let's take a step into the back here. So I had the seat back about as far as it'll go, and as I will demonstrate, I can sit behind myself, and my legs are actually still clearing the seat. So this back seat is ginormous. Headroom is honestly pretty good. My head clears. It's just my hair touching it, because I got kind of tall hair, you know, I got a big head. But close the door, very comfortable. So if you got kids, great. You can put like 6 kids back here. It's pretty cool. Your kids, they got little ashtrays. So if your kids are smokers, man, your kids are golden. What is this? This one's like frozen. Huh. That's interesting. I'll have to play with that later. But there is an ashtray on both doors, so if your kids are smokers, you're good to go. You got little air holes, so when your kids are smoking fat ones, they can get the air out. Little mat pockets, so your kids can hold your smokes back there. Well, yeah, that's pretty cool. Very roomy back seat. We'll take a look at the trunk. It's got a little neat trunk popper. Now, most of the full-size Buicks got this. You pop this. You see, the trunk flies open, and it kind of flies open with some authority. So you want to be careful that you're not, you know, somebody you care about's not standing over the trunk, because man, they'll get cranked by this thing. They'll be knocked out in the next week. But there you have the massive trunk. Now, I fit a bunch of stuff back here before, so that's pretty sweet. There's my 12-disc changer, which is currently not functioning properly, so I'd like to kind of fix that, because that would be really sweet if I get that to work. This is, you know, part of my bumper. I was on a road trip and this thing decided it did not want to be part of my Park Avenue anymore, and it flew out from underneath the car. Good stuff there. So you got your fuel door release. So there is a button, so like, you know, okay, try to get in here, it's not going to happen. So you go here, fuel, boom. Pop it open, there you go. Kind of cool. Overly complicated, yes, but it's kind of cool. Slam her down, got the supercharged badge. I've had people ask me if this was fake, if this was like a joke, and I'm like, no, it's actually supercharged, that's stock. So a lot of people don't know these cars exist. But if you're gonna buy one of these things, I definitely recommend getting one without the Grand Touring suspension, because the Grand Touring suspension is a little firmer. If you get one that says in the same location, it'll say Dynaride, that'll be a little smoother for you. Because these cars, most of them do have air shocks in the back, so they're electronic load leveling air shocks. So every time you start the car, you'll hear a from under the back seat, and what that is a little air compressor pumping up the rear shocks to level the car out due to the change in the weight of the car. So like if you put like, you know, 10 or 15 people in the back seat, which will fit just fine, the car will be squatting a little bit and it'll actually level a car out by pumping the air up in the shocks. Not a huge fan of this system because the shocks are old, you know, older than I am at this point. And they make some noise. So the compressor's still working pretty good. I've had a LeSabre that the compressor ran like all the time. This compressor seems to be rock solid, but these shocks, they're making a lot of noise, a lot of metallic banging around sounds, and I'm not a fan of that. So I will be probably converting this to just standard shocks in the back, because they do make little conversion kits now for really cheap price. So I will be most likely doing that in the next few months, as well as front struts, because the front struts are blown out at the moment. But if you're looking at buying one of these things, watch out for some rust, okay? Because I was at the junkyard today, and I was playing with a different Park Avenue, looking for some parts for this one. And up in here was all rotted out on the one, so I actually bought a fender. And you have to take this out and get it. And I pulled it out, and it was full of mud. So like, mud can get in here, and it won't come out. But I bought this fender thinking, okay, it's just dirty or whatever. I get it home and I hose it out, and the bottom of the fender's all rotted away. I'm like, dang, I bought a fender for 30 bucks that doesn't have a bottom mount. So I felt kind of stupid there. So moral of the story is, when you go to the junkyard, make sure you thoroughly look over your part. But I did mention to get I did manage to get a new hood for this car. As you see, the early Park Avenues, they got this aluminum hood, which is kind of cool because it's super light. You'd think with such a massive hood that it would be really heavy, but with the aluminum hood, it's actually pretty light. I was able to carry it around by myself. But you can see here, the paint, especially 90s GM paint, is not super fond of sticking to aluminum, especially, you know, 23 years later. So it likes to peel up, as demonstrated very well with this car. So as you can imagine, this drives me absolutely insane, because I do a lot of work to try to keep my Buick nice, and the hood's kind of bringing me down. So I bought another hood. It is unfortunately an aluminum hood because it was off a 97 Park Avenue, but I bought it from a 97 base model Park Avenue, so it's got the little hood ornament, which is kind of cool. But yeah, if you're looking at a Park Avenue and it's got the emblem in the grill like this, that means that's an Ultra hood. Usually that means the car is an Ultra, but I will be doing some mix and matching on this car, and I will be putting a base model hood on this car even though it is an Ultra. I don't know, it's probably gonna piss some people off, but I don't really care. I think the hood ornament's cool. But some stuff to watch out for if you're buying a Park Avenue. Sometimes you get a little rust in here. This car's doing it just a smidge, so I'll have to take these big fat seals off and sand that down and paint that. As you can see, the rockers in this car are really good shape. So car's really solid. But if you're looking at buying one of these things, you kind of got to be prepared to do some work. You know, these aren't new cars, but what I will say is they're built very well. I would say they're built better than most new cars. So you can be assured that you're getting a pretty solid car here.
Remember to subscribe so you don't miss any of my future uploads.